Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. This morning we're looking at my apple tree bonsai. It's not a crab apple, it's a regular apple tree. It was growing in my sister's garden right beside the house when she moved into the house, and it had been cut back severely quite a few times. So this tree was probably, almost the height of the house at one time, and then they've cut it back. It probably grew again and they cut it back. So it was basically a stump when I dug it out of her garden. And all the branches have been regrown since then. It had no branches and almost no roots when I dug it up. The roots, there was one big thick root that went into the ground, and I had to cut it off with a saw. So yeah, it started with a stump, and this is how it is today, about probably close to 15 years later. So all the branches right now have been grown with clip and grow techniques. The tree has never been wired. It's getting to the point where we might want to start wiring it to get a few of the branches placed in a little better position, but we'll see. So the major things we're doing today are repotting it into a better soil. We're going to plant moss on the top of the soil. There's a lot of deadwood in here that we need to clean up and apply lime sulfur to preserve the deadwood, and just get it ready for spring when the leaves come out. The buds are swelling now, and you can just start to see some of the tips of the leaves coming out of the buds. So it's a good time to do the repot. So I'll just show you some of the areas that we're going to be working on today. Right here, this was cut off when I dug up the tree. Someone had cut it off with a saw. And I've never carved it. And so we're going to carve that today. And there's two options we can do. We can hollow it out to make it look like, part of the trunk had died off. Or we can just carve it flush, and it'll maybe slowly heal. I don't think it'll ever heal completely over in my lifetime, but it'll certainly, the callus will roll around and give it a more natural look back there. Some of the other areas of interest, on this side, we've got a lot of deadwood here that needs a bit of carving and cleaning up. It's had another trunk removed here long ago that's hollow. The water drains down through this hole down to the underneath the tree, so we can maybe clean that up a bit. And it needs repotting. This soil is getting, it still drains well, but I think we need to change it. I think it's been 2 years now since we've repotted it. The pot that it's in is a really nice Japanese tokonami pot. It's I don't know what it would have cost to buy new, but it would be quite expensive. Someone in the club thought it would be suitable for this tree, and they gave it to me for a really good price. So I'm really happy with the pot. Okay, the first step for repotting is to loosen the soil from the edge of the pot. And we'll see if the tree comes out. Grab it nice and firmly and lift. There we go. And we'll take our pot away. Pot back here. And then we'll begin raking out the roots. So again, start from the center of the tree and rake towards the edges. That way you're only ripping through crossing roots. You're not ripping through your radial roots that you want to keep. Now, it looks like the roots have been doing fairly well. We've got nice fine feeder roots everywhere. The soil looks nice and loose. It's not compacted. And you can tell if you've got good bonsai soil, the trees always drain well. So as we're working on the roots, we want to keep them moist, so you can either mist them or give them a watering every now and then, just so they don't dry out while you're working on the tree. Like that. And we'll continue raking. We want to make sure all our surface roots are going the right direction. They're combed out. You can see some of these roots in this matted area. You actually want to rip through some of the roots to get them not so congested. You want to make sure that the roots are going in a radial pattern rather than crossing. So we can actually, you know, rip through some of those side roots in order to get our radial root spread. And it's getting there. You can see when you comb some of these roots out how long they are. So they'll need trimming to get it all back in the pot. We've pretty well got it all combed out now. Not too bad. And I'll give it another water. Make sure you keep these roots nice and moist while we're working on the tree. So the next step, we are going to actually wash the roots. So you can either use a hose and hose all the old soil off, or you can use like a dunk tank, swish the tree around in the water, all the old soil will fall off, and we'll replace it with all new soil. So we're going to do that now. So the reason you want to wash the roots on an apple tree or any fruit tree is that the apple trees are really delicious. Not only to rabbits, they love chewing on the bark, but also to insects. So we want to make sure we don't have any insects in the soil that'll eat the roots, or, you know, just try and make the tree as clean as possible for the repotting. So here we go. Let's put it in our dunk tank. And we'll just swish it around and get the roots all cleaned. And if you have any areas that have soil in it, you might want to find your root rake. Here it is. You might want to, you know, work at it. Get in there as you're swishing the tree around, and try and get all the old soil out. You can see on the bottom here, that's the initial root that I cut off. And it's healing over really nicely. There is one spot that's still wood here, but yeah, it's done well. For, you know, when I initially dug it up, it was a very severe root pruning. Had virtually no roots. It was basically just a stump, and all these roots have grown. Okay, so the roots are nice and clean. I'm just gonna clean the tabletop off again. Okay, so we've got our tabletop cleaned off again. We'll lift the tree out of the water and we'll get it on the bench, and we'll start raking roots and root pruning. Okay, so we're going to rake them out again. Everything in a radial pattern. Sorry about that horrible noise. And I'll just change the camera angle so you can see this a little better. So we're combing and untangling. And you have to remember that all these fine roots will thicken up over the years. So it's important to position them when they're flexible like this, to get them all sorted out, rather than wait years from now and have to deal with a lot of severe root cutting. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We can run our rake through everything and it's all combed out. So the next job is we have to actually start pruning our roots. You can see from this arrangement there's no way this is going to fit in the pot, and we want to keep our roots in a radial pattern like that. We don't want to tuck roots underneath each other to fit it in the pot. We want the roots to continue growing in a radial pattern. So we're going to go around and do a profile prune to the roots. Anything that's excessively long we'll trim off. And this helps equalize the balance of your roots in the tree also. The vigorous roots that have grown long get cut off. The fine inner roots that haven't grown that long remain untouched and just keep growing. So eventually all the roots sort of equalize in vigor and strength, and you get a really nice root spread. A really nice root spread. So you can see this tree has a very shallow root system. It could fit in a very shallow pot, but it wouldn't look good in a shallow pot. When you have a trunk this size, if you have too shallow a pot, it doesn't look balanced. The pot it's in now is a very heavy pot, and you need that for a thick trunk tree. You need that stable base under it. Otherwise it just doesn't look right. So just because you have a deep pot doesn't mean you shouldn't work on your roots like this. You should still keep all your roots in a radial pattern, one root plane. So, you know, you kind of imagine that your tree would go in a shallow pot, but it's not. So over on this side, we've got one root that's very high here that we've got to prune off. It's just out of the root plane. So we want to get rid of that. Like that. And I'm just checking for other roots that are, the rest look pretty good. We've got one here that I think can go also. It's a little high. And we've got one here that's maybe crossing a bit. So we can take that portion of it off. And maybe some of these. This one here. I'm just rotating it around, looking at the roots now. Looking for the direction, if they're crossing other roots severely, get rid of them. But they're looking pretty good. Nothing that is a major fault. Yeah, they don't look too bad. Happy with them. And we've got some roots hanging down from the bottom that we're just going to give a prune. Now normally I would prune it right down flush with the base, but I want to encourage more healing around this large cut where the tree was originally cut, or the root was originally cut off. So I'm leaving a few roots down lower. So I think that's pretty good for the roots now. We're just going to give it one final flush in the water. And we'll leave it in the water until we got the pot ready to put the tree in. So the next job is to clean the pot out and put our screens in and a drainage layer. So I've got the pot cleaned up and I'm just looking for the front of a pot. Every pot has a better side to it. There's always, in a clay pot, there's always flaws, if you call them flaws, they could be character, that make one side of the pot look slightly better than the other side. And if you look down here, so right here, I hope you can see it, right here, there's a line where the clay pieces were joined. So here, there's another line here, and two on that side. So this was one clay piece, the front was a clay piece, and the back was a clay piece. And they're joined here. So there's a slight line there. There is on the other side too, but it's less. I don't even know if you can notice it. There is a slight line on this side, but you can't really see it. So this is the front of the pot. It's the nicest side. I don't see any major flaws in it. So that's the side we're going to have the front of the tree on. Okay, so the pot's clean. I've got my drainage screens in place. The next thing you want to do is place your tree in the pot. We want to fill up the pot to a certain level with bonsai soil, put the tree on top, and then fill in around the roots with more soil. So we have to establish the height of the tree in the pot. So let's do that. We'll get the tree out of our water. And we'll just test fit it in the pot. The roots all clear the edges, which is good. And a height for the tree is probably somewhere about here. So it looks like we've got to fill the pot at least halfway with soil and maybe a little higher. We'll mound it up and then we'll adjust the height in the final position later. So let's do that. Put the tree back in the water and we'll start filling up our pot with bonsai soil. The mixture I'm using in here is probably about 50% turfus, sifted turfus, to get all the fine dust particles out. Probably 20% perlite, which is the white colored stones. It's got some composted pine bark in it, and it also has some sifted compost. So it's a nice free draining mix. Not a whole lot of organics, but it's some. And I'm just gonna do some pouring here rather than cupping it out. And then I'll have to mix up some more soil, won't I? Okay, so we'll see how this height is. I'm thinking it might be a little high. I'm going to take some out. I've got the camera positioned so you're looking right, straight on at the edge of the pot, so you can see the actual height of the tree. And I would say it's not too bad. I think that's a good height. So the next thing we're going to look at is the rotation of the tree to get the exact front, and the position in the pot, front to back and side to side. So because this tree slants, has movement to the left, and the bulk of the apex is towards the left, we probably want to shift it in the pot to the right a bit, just to create a balanced arrangement. So just moving it over, and I'll come back and have a look at it. Zoom out here, pan up. I think I've still got to go to the right a little more. So we're going to shift our tree further to the right, to about there. Have a look at it. Yeah, I like that. The overall composition looks fairly centered, but the tree isn't on center. It looks balanced. So the next thing we're going to look at is our placement front and back. So it's always nice to move the tree towards the back of the pot a little, so it's not exactly on center. It gives a little more of a landscape feel to the front, and at the back, where you don't see it as much, you can have it a little shorter, because it's just not seen from the back very often. So I'm going to shift it to the back just slightly to about there. And our roots are still fitting in very nicely. We'll do a final check. Maybe a tad too high. No, that's good. You want to spend a lot of time on this. When you position the tree in the pot, once it's in there, you fill it in with soil, it's pretty well set for the year or two. So if it's in the wrong angle or the wrong height, you're kind of stuck with it for quite a while. So that's why, you know, take a few minutes, get it positioned correctly, because it's a one-shot deal, kind of. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. The other thing we can look at is the lean of the tree. You know, tilting it forwards and backwards. Our apex does come quite forward, so by tilting it backwards, it probably would improve our trunk line a little. Let me just have a look. Yeah, I think when we put it in, we'll just put it slightly back. And I'll just put a little bit of soil under the front. There. Let's have another final look. Yeah, that's it. I like it. Okay, so let's continue filling in the bonsai soil. And we're going to do it slowly, just a little bit at a time, and work it into the roots. We don't want any, you know, large air pockets of Places with no soil, we want the soil to contact the roots everywhere. And I'm using a nice dry soil mix so it just flows in around the roots really nicely. If your soil's damp, it sticks together in lumps and doesn't get in all the spaces very well. So make sure your soil's nice and dry when you're repotting. If it's not, leave it out in the sun and dry it out. Put it on a tray or plastic and get it dry. You can see as I work it into the roots, it disappears down below the root ball, filling in all those spaces. The roots will be really happy. Happy roots means a happy tree. Means a happy Nigel. That's what it means. Because when Nigel's happy, he's really happy. And in case you're wondering what I'm babbling about, there was a hit song on the radio quite a few years back that was called "Making Plans for Nigel." And that was part of the lyrics. It said, when he's happy, he's really happy. It's a funny song. I think I was in high school when that came out, and everyone sang that song to me. Okay, so I'll continue filling in the roots with soil and get my soil level up to the proper height in the pot, which is just below the lip. You don't want it level with the lip, you want it slightly below. And you've got to think about the moss. We're going to put a layer of moss on the tree, so you want it about a 1/4 inch below the lip, or about 10 millimeters. Is that 1/4 inch? No, that's more. 8 millimeters. And you want to allow for a layer of moss. So that's so when the moss and the soil is finally in the pot, you still want it slightly below the lip of the pot. And that looks really good. Okay, so we'll be back when I'm done here. Okay, so we've got our soil filled in. So the next job, we're going to water the tree thoroughly, and then we're going to plant moss, stop surface evaporation, and make the tree look nice. So let's do that next. We'll water it first, and then we'll go get moss. Okay, so again, with the newly repotted tree, you want to water thoroughly. You want to water till the water coming out of the drainage holes runs nice and clear. And what that's doing is washing out all the fine dust particles that'll clog your soil up. And you can see the bonsai soil, it's draining really well. It's running out the drainage holes. It's fairly clear already because there wasn't much dust in this soil. Yeah, it drains really nicely. It doesn't pool up on the surface. It just flows right through. Because roots need air, and that's what this bonsai soil does. It gives the roots lots of air, lots of water, nutrients. Okay, so we'll run one more watering can through the pot, and then we'll go get some moss and start planting our moss on top. Okay, so I'm back from collecting moss, and as you can see, the moss doesn't look very green. It was in almost full sun. It's dried out. We haven't had rain in a while, and it looks quite brown. So don't worry about that. Moss, once you've watered it, it turns green like almost immediately. By the end of the day, this stuff will be very green. So the first thing you want to do with your moss, it's quite dry. You can see there's a bit of soil on the back, so you want to wash it. So you just dip it in water. Rub as much of the soil off the bottom as you can to get it just to a thin layer of moss. You can see we've soaked it now. And then you can start applying it to the tree. And you can break it into small pieces and arrange it around the roots first. And just push it down to make good contact with the soil. Just like that. And apply it around the entire pot. And you don't want moss that's really thick. Try and get the moss that's growing in a thin layer. Scrape it off. Whatever it's growing on, wet it, put it on your tree. And you just fit it together like a jigsaw puzzle. Push it down to contact the soil. It's looking good. Any little bits of stones like this we'll pick out after when it's all watered and all the moss is in place, and we'll just check the overall look of it and fix anything that needs fixing. Some plantings you would want a variety of different types of mosses. So if you're doing a forest or something, you don't want your moss to look all the same throughout the forest. You want various pieces of different colored moss, different types of moss. But on a tree like this, which resembles an orchard tree, one that you would see in an old farmhouse, an old apple tree that's rotting away, still alive, you want a nice layer that looks like grass. You don't want it all inconsistent or to look like it was growing in a forest. So we're after a fairly even look to all the moss in this planting. If you do have surface roots coming out, you don't want to cover them up with moss. You want to kind of go around them. And you'll have to continue pruning the moss because it'll grow over the roots and start going up the trunk. So in the summer, as the moss starts growing, you've got to keep it trimmed. So you can scissor prune it, pick it off with tweezers, just to keep it from growing up the tree. As you can see, the moss provides a really nice contrast to the driftwood on the trunk. And when we put some lime sulfur on that, it'll look even more dramatic. We'll have this lush green moss, our dry driftwood, and then our living veins of the tree. Okay, so we've got our layer of moss all around the tree. It's below the lip of the pot, which is good. As it grows up, we'll keep scissor pruning it to keep it nice and trim. The next step is to give the moss a thorough watering, and then we'll start picking out pieces of soil from the surface. You can see pieces of vermiculite here, which don't look good, and little stones, and there's a few weeds in the moss that we can pick out. So that'll be the next step, watering it and then cleaning up all the moss. Okay, so we've watered and cleaned up the moss. You can see the nice shadow the tree's creating on the moss. Just looks like a spring scene. No leaves on the tree. Grass is starting to green up. Yeah, so that's our moss job. So the next step for this tree will be to clean up our dead wood. You can see it's a little black here. It's still a little wet from watering, but so what we'll do is we'll get a toothbrush and we'll brush down all our dead wood, and then we'll paint a very diluted mixture of lime sulfur and water on it, and that'll help preserve the dead wood. It'll also make it a little brighter, so it contrasts a little more from the live veins to the dead wood. So that's our next step. Okay, so our next step is to wash down the tree. So I've got a toothbrush and water, and I put a few drops of soap in the water just to, like dish detergent, just to help clean the dead wood, and we're also going to clean up the live wood. So we just start from the top of the tree up. We'll start about here, and we're just going to scrub it down. And once you've finished scrubbing it all down, just rinse it off with your watering can or a hose, and you need to do this a couple of times a year to keep it all looking good. I've brought the tree inside so we can have a little more detailed look at the tree. I was hoping to get more done to the tree today, but I'm running out of time. I won't have time to get the lime sulfur on, and I was going to do some of the deadwood carving today, but it'll have to wait for another day. When the tree comes out in leaf, we'll revisit it. We'll put some lime sulfur on the deadwood, and when the roots get a little more established, we'll start doing some of the carving up top, just to get rid of that saw mark where it was cut off and make it look more like a natural dead part of the tree. So we'll go in and have a closer look at some of the parts of the tree. There's our new moss layer, and it's pretty brown still, but it's already starting to green up just from a bit of water and sunlight. Here's our kind of dead section of the tree, which has a lot of little knobs and stuff where suckers have started to grow. So we're going to clean off all that bark eventually and get that cleaned up. You can see our live vein running up to the main apex of the tree. Yeah, so that's kind of a look at the tree for today. So that's it for today. Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. We'll see you next time.